Family is everything. They'll always be there for you. Blood is thicker than water. You only have one family, so cherish them. And more cultural colloquialisms at 11. But that's a lie we are bearing today. These are very deep-rooted cultural, societal, patriarchal belief systems around family, which have the perception that they are untouchable. They cannot be examined, but this is precisely where we are going today. And this is the lie that also says that family is automatically safe, that they'll always be there to catch you, that all is good and always will be good, that this is automatically your family as well. Now, on certain levels, they are and they aren't, and we'll get to that as well. But consciously or unconsciously, we are so often told in many ways that family is everything, that it stops sounding like advice that is open for interpretation and examination, and starts feeling like a law of nature. But what we're here to also look at is the shadow of family. What happens when the people who raised you are the same people who silenced you? When family loyalty feels more like a coupon, or I don't know, that's what came to mind. Maybe that's not the best analogy. But this is a reason that you can't be yourself. You've signed up to something and you just got to punch numbers or something like that. What about family when you're still wearing the role that you were given as a child? And this is the role that you are unconsciously performing as an adult, even when it is killing you slowly. So in this episode, we're not here to pull apart the idea or crush it because we're against it. It is sacred. It is holy. And having a conscious, healthy expression of family, I wanted to say patriarchy, we'll get to that too, is something so beautiful. We're doing it because family as a construct is too important to be left unexamined. We're specifically talking about the family that you're born into, the family that you choose, and the family that you find on a soul level. These are the ones who are here to challenge you, to teach you, to transform you. We're talking about how family can be the deepest home or the deepest prison, and how the version you grew up with has shaped your sense of self in ways you might not even see.
What an intro.
Daniel, family has been something so sticky, so suffocating, so many things for us. But Can you start by sharing your first-hand experience of the family construct?
God, where do I begin without starting to make enemies immediately?
Let's stick to this life.
I mean, it's interesting because my family don't really know a lot about what I've seen and what I've experienced, especially in the work that we do regarding their role. But doing this work, one thing that really stood out to me was hearing that we either at a soul level choose family to support our growth in conjunction with our own or in spite of it. And I myself, and I know you're going to speak to your own too, we chose our families ultimately working in spite of our own birth family in this life for our soul's growth. And this isn't good or bad. It doesn't mean they've done anything wrong by their nature. It's just the way that the energies work. And so that's something that was a huge missing piece of the puzzle when you just can't get it right, when you just can't be the best version of yourself. You can't have the harmony that you really would like. Why? Well, sometimes the soul chose the family for you to grow out of rather than to grow into. And so that's sort of a bit of a high level.
Can you give examples, grounded examples of what it was like being in your family?
Yeah, I'll speak more to my own direct experience of like the choices I made, because I feel like that's probably what's relevant. Is when my parents split when I was 9, there was a very strong unconscious decision, very deep, where there was a lot of loyalty, and I'd basically decided so far down into my being that I'll be the man of the house. And I remember what we used to do was we were raised on these, I don't know if you've ever seen them at the stores, but these little star stickers that you can get. And they have different colors, you know, the gold, the silver, the blue, the green, the red. And when I was young growing up, we'd actually do work around the house and get a little sticker, a little star to put on the sheet on the fridge. And then what we'd do is at the end we'd cash it in and get a little bit of money for it. And the star that you got was reflective of how big the job was, how good of a job you did, if it was necessary to be done at the time. So it was sort of case by case basis, but it was really good. And after the split came, I really found myself over, I want to say like the next 4 to 5 years, very strongly leaning into, you know, I want to be the little man of the house. And that's one thing I very much latched onto, was doing all of the jobs. I'd even pick up my sister's jobs if they were willing to give them to me to earn those extra stars. And that included everything from, first it started with sweeping the driveway to cooking dinner, washing the dishes, and then putting them away myself, sometimes if I could. And that there really, even though it might not seem like it has a lot to do with family, it goes back to that underlying belief that I had made that really is trying to be like the father figure, because after my dad left, there was no male influence. And so that was probably one of the most overt expressions that was easy to pick up on, and one that even now I sort of, in an interesting sense, I'll sort of look back on fondly, because it was also how I was sort of building my own success and at such a young age too.
But how did that distort you coming into adulthood?
And that's where it starts to get really heavy, because you realize that by doing that, by making a decision like that, it doesn't matter what the conscious mind thinks. The unconscious has missed out on elements of childhood by doing that, and then seeks to chase it. Sort of like, think of Michael Jackson. He missed out on his childhood, so he spent most of his adult life, creating, Neverland and having kids over his place. Now, I don't want to go political with it, but it's that idea of when you miss that developmental part, that we cling to the safety of the elements of those things that we had in childhood, and for me that was video games, and that sort of became a crutch moving into adulthood, especially with my health issues and such, to really attempt to hold on to the childhood that my unconscious realized that it missed out on, in a sense.
We also tend to normalize that, well, this is how families are. Every family has their odd dynamic, but you just hustle yourself out of there, grind, just this, just that.
It was my normal.
That's it. You are so conditioned into this from a very young age that this is your model of reality. And whilst you can consciously start to pattern, but the memories and the experiences still live in the body, because the body is also frozen in another timeline where it is still the child.
And speaking to frozen, let's hear your
story. Speaking to frozen, so through hypnosis and other modalities of investigating our deep self, we make the joke between us that I grew up in the cryo, that my body was the equivalent of being a meat sack in the freezer. I could not feel.
And even literally, like, you'd come out and we'd go out somewhere and I'd hold your hand in the car and it was so cold, and within 2 minutes you're thawed out already. Always
so cold. And I used to just make the joke that I have cold blood like a reptile. And then, this is the first winter living outside of the parents' house, and it's been a cold winter, but I have not felt freezing. And there are some days which just are freezing, but I would sleep with like 3 blankets on and the thickest pajamas, and I could still just not get warm. So when you are frozen, you cannot feel. And then on top of that, the energetic compression. And then on top of that, the fear of any sort of change has seeped into everything. The furniture is minimum 30 years old. Everything, sure, it's clean, it's orderly, but it is also like a museum.
It's never moved.
and the energy is just so trapped.
They could have bolted the furniture into the carpet and no one ever would have noticed over decades.
No, you couldn't. And even just speaking of furniture, like the dynamic shows the imbalance where my mum never got a say as to what entered the house nor what left. She didn't have a choice as to what came in. My dad would always, I found this and I'm doing this. And then if she tried to speak up, then it's like, you're always going against me. So what, you can only imagine what that did to my voice, as I've had throat problems all my life. But then I'd never had a contrast. So it was only when we got together that all of a sudden there was a contrast. And food was a big thing because you gave me choice as to what to eat.
I basically just said, like, what would you like to eat?
And I had no idea because I didn't even know what my body likes, how it likes to eat. Especially,
and I love to cook, so.
And I love to eat. But I didn't think I had such liberty with this. And this was perplexing because up until a couple of months ago, I was still sitting in the same childhood seat as I was when I was 4. And you have to eat what is put in front of you and how much is put in front of you. And there are many other dynamics. It's not just that. As I also say, my whole life had been just missed calls where...
I just want to add that on food as well. That's one thing as well I inherited from my family. A mother, bloodline who's Polish, and there was implications living in Poland in World War II for my grandmother, and basically my mum grew up poor, so she basically, I don't know if it's a vow or just holds a strong belief that my kids will never go hungry. And then my father had the rule of you don't leave the table till your food's finished. The zero waste policy, he called it. And you can imagine those two were a cocktail for just eating disorders.
And the examples we have are ample and rife, and only of recent have I been able to have a more conscious, healthy relationship. There's finally space to breathe. Your situation is a little bit different.
A bit more of a minefield.
Yeah. But it goes to the notion that up until we both didn't start our shadow work, the impact of family and intergenerational trauma and the ancestry was unexamined. I look at
and that's key. Ancestry plays an enormous role in who we are. You look at my studies and they've got effects, trauma and starvation and elements of that going down mice. Lineage is up to 7 to 14 generations it continues to impact.
Yeah.
And we want to think we're individual and we want to think that we have the free choice to be who we are. But we're so connected to our own lineage in, not even just the DNA sense, but in other ways as well, to carry on, even sacred contracts on behalf of the direction of the family as well.
We'll speak to contracts and soul families in a moment, but not the easiest thing, no, I take that back. The most difficult thing to do is when you're around family, pay attention to how you feel in your body.
If you can.
And that's what I'm saying, it's not simple at all because I couldn't do any of that under the cold and the suppression.
It's simple, it's not easy.
No. Does your jaw clench? Do you stop breathing? Do you eat really quickly so you can leave the table?
I never started breathing and I always ate quickly.
Start seeing how does this show up in your body, because do you relax? Do you ease into it? Or do you feel guilt? Do your shoulders start to flare up because you are so used to just carrying everyone else's beingness? That's a great way to start. Now,
and it's interesting the way you mentioned that, like on your beingness, there's unspoken dynamics playing out as well. And these are usually you need someone else to come in and pick up on them unless you're sort of trained to actually know these dynamics. But they're there nonetheless. They
are there. In the most subtle ways, it's for me it wasn't subtle, but for other people it's when they want access to you but you don't want to give the energy, when they want proximity, when they demand X or don't understand Y. But we'll continue. Can you discuss how family is often a cultural product, especially today, that has more influences externally from religion, politics, and economy even?
I mean, even going back further than that, it's an evolutionary thing. We don't exist. depends on the model you want to subscribe to, but I do think it is fair to assume that we did evolve tribally, and we worked in small communities. I believe it was around 150 sort of people, so extended families, and it's played a very strong role in our survival as well. People picking up different roles, everyone having as we mentioned roles before, like a role to play. We think of the hunter and the gatherer, and the men, and even the patriarch, the leader of the men, going out and hunting. Like there was group coordination and elements as well, and there was raising the new generation, like a mentorship sort of dynamic as well. So a lot of it was really shaped by survival needs, because to be ostracized from your family ultimately meant death for the longest part of human history. And to ignore that is really quite quite naive, because we have a world and an economy, and like a global economy now, that doesn't need to lean on that. Yet a lot of us are still, if we're not conscious, playing out those dynamics just sort of automatically without realizing.
Even with, religion is a whole other lie that is to be deconstructed and buried.
We'll get to that one.
But how, for me, there was always the need to be home on the Sabbath. And all hell was raised if, heaven forbid, I made a plan, particularly on a Sabbath.
Why is the Sabbath so important?
Something, the day of rest.
Right.
And, well, actually it is like, God built the world in 6 days, and on the seventh day he rested.
And so the Jews said that Saturday was the seventh, and then...
yeah.
And then Christians said that Sunday was the seventh. Yeah.
So it is, the day of rest, and there were times when even I would be out and I would say, I'm not coming home because I'm, an impromptu plan has come up.
A Friday night, like who's not out on a Friday night?
Yeah, or something like that, and I would either be not spoken to, I would be yelled at, there would be incessant phone calls. It was haram. It was the worst thing that you can do. And I remember once that, dinner or something, and I just screamed that I've been home for like 52 or 100 something Friday nights. How has my life improved? And it hasn't. It has not gotten better. But even just religion and the adherence to it created such a groove. And that permeated into many other ways. Do not date anyone who's not a Jew. Do not do this, do not do that. Jews this, Jews that. And I never bought it because my life wasn't getting better by adhering to it.
But they never set you up or try to put you in the right communities to find someone.
No, nothing.
So they didn't actually help you. They just set the rules in without any of the benefits.
Exactly.
Or the conveniences.
No. So then, in order to keep up the identity of I am the good daughter and I am the good girl, then you just keep on saying yes unconsciously to all of these rules and try to play them out in reality.
Why does my throat hurt again?
Exactly.
Why can't I speak?
Yeah. Why does my life not move? So even how, there's different religions who have different imprints on the family unit. Now, what does that mean for you? How has that restricted you from certain experiences, certain milestones, certain events, or certain expectations that don't belong to you but are so enforced by the family? And the fear of going outside of that, as you said beforehand, equals unconscious death.
I mean, I remember back, it was only about 6 or 7 years ago when my cousin said something that was a revelation to me. And he said, when you were younger, your mother was very controlling. And I didn't really think much of it at the time. I was like, what do you mean? Like, that's not how I remember it. And I went back to him and he gave some examples and like my mind was blown from that, because by the time I want to say I was like maybe 5, like I was already running on these scripts of that's just the dynamic. That's just how it is. I was already shaped and molded and set into form. And there was really the free will choices were already out of the equation by that point. So then a lot of my own upbringing was already playing on these roles.
Amazing. Now, I want to speak on how the patriarchal model of family often suppresses individuation.
First, we should look actually to define what patriarchy even is. It's such a political hot term, and it's been co-opted and really has been used to fuel the gender wars. But really, we just want to start by defining patriarchy as nothing more than just, it's a social organization, primarily focused around authority and power, and even just the social norms that we adopt. And these are to generally promote the masculine at the cost of the feminine, but it's not necessarily a male versus female thing, because it's really about the patriarchs, the people at the top, the masculine energy at the top, that really gets it all. Think of like chimps, for example, and the way they socially organize. It's the head chimp that has all the power, not all of the male chimps.
But it's also a worldview, a deeply entrenched worldview that treats domination as natural. For example, the killing of animals, and we'll get to that in future episodes, but that is a distorted expression of patriarchy as well. And it also speaks as hierarchy as necessary, and as you just said, it's one monkey at the top, but individuality as secondary, and not even secondary, not necessary, because that's how the system is. Because if the feminine was allowed to breathe, then the patriarchy knows that it would dissolve, it would deconstruct, it could not exist. But one distortion gives rise to the other. So
that's that duality between like individuation and collective unity.
And we'll get to more of this, but what we see then in patriarchal systems, the family members, especially the children, are already, without their conscious consent, assigned fixed roles. You are the obedient daughter, you are the provider son, you are the submissive wife, you are the provider husband. These are unconscious projections that did you sign up for? You see this in multi-generational families, or maybe from Asian, African, or even European countries, where before someone is born, they are already your retirement plan. That my son, who is not born yet, is going to look after me in old age, because they're already projecting that they will be incompetent and fried at that age. And they have to do that because I'm going to now spend the next 30 years doing everything for them and putting them through the best school so they can buy the best house so that they can look after me at old age.
It's a transaction, really.
Yeah. And that is a form of patriarchy, because what that already does is serving the family hierarchy rather than allowing for the individual, in this case the child, to be who they want to be and have come to be in this world.
I mean, it's no different, really, even if you think to like the monetary system and the way that central banks are lending money to governments that the people alive today will never be able to pay off, but future generations will. And this is the microcosm of that, you might think.
The Lie of Money is a good episode.
Yeah.
And these roles, the good daughter, the good son, the something, these aren't negotiated. This is like doing a handshake, but on the outset it looks like a good deal. It's like I'll get shelter and food and accommodation, and I'll get parents who give me everything, but you have no idea what the unconscious terms and conditions and rules of engagement are in this contract that override personal choice and force conformity over authenticity.
Wait, are we talking about family or are we talking about cults?
Have you had a direct experience of, I guess, when you tried to colour outside of the lines and you were brought back into line, especially as an adult?
I mean, the big and obvious one is moving out. This is one that it was a bit fuzzy, and there were reasons why I had to sort of plan it on the side. But I remember when my mother found out, she was. I still don't fully know what she felt, but to move out after I had unconsciously taken on the role of energetically being, the man who will never leave, which, to be 35 and living at home, the classic story of the man in mother's basement, to actively step outside of that one was one that was so outside of it was so far outside of the box of what that role actually allowed, that my perception of the situation is that it was seen as a betrayal. And that's really the only way I can really sort of define it.
or your descent from
Yeah.
descent, not descent, the descent, or both, this was punished. This is a type of punishment from authority. Usually we also think of it as you have disobeyed the father and they cut you off kind of thing. And this is not rewarding obedience to the authority figures of the family, the ones who's given us anything. And there are extreme cases of parents disowning the children, and also that's okay. It's like, I had to cut off the child, or because they were XYZ, or they were dissenting.
You see that in like fundamentalist Christian groups where the son's gay and then the father's like, no son of mine is gay, so, leave and I never want to talk to you again. And that's because really, I mean, you think about it, the father in this case had a model of who his son should be. Mm-hmm. I mean, or daughter in this case, it doesn't really matter. Yeah. But it's the idea of the son. It's not about the son's life or his own individuality. It's about, well, how do I feel knowing that my son chose this lifestyle or acted outside of what I expected him to be?
But then on the flip side, if a child, due to their own need for boundaries and space, cut off or separate themselves from the parents, society is very quick to come in and say, you only have one parent, you only have one this, they're not going to live forever. And then they pull out, I hate this so much, that Instagram meme where they have the incoming phone call from mum or dad saying that this is the most important thing in your life. I mean, maybe, but that's not a cover-all blanket. And that, again, goes to... I
mean, it could be. They could be in hospital or something.
Yeah, it could be. But is it every day? Is that the rule to live by?
Yeah.
Let's talk a bit more about how this patriarchal model, and this is just, one of our deepest wounds, is the suppression of emotional autonomy. And this was my role, to keep the peace, to make sure emotions are imbalanced. Not imbalanced, in balance. And that anything outside of the family's approval of emotions had to be silenced. So the emotional life becomes policed. And then we internalize this system of control, even that we're not there. We're still learning how to be with emotions and express them and let them flow as they need to. And you see this everywhere. Adults who struggle to trust themselves. So we spoke about going within. I mean, you've had quite the emotional suppression there, my love.
Yeah, where do I start on that one? I mean, especially like after the divorce, it was hard for all of us, my sisters and my mother and I, and things would go wrong, and I would sit there going, I don't understand what happened, like, can we talk about this? Because they were upset, and reasonably so. But the thing is, I'd want to talk about it and they wouldn't, and I would get frustrated because it wasn't a case of while they're emotional, it was we don't talk about it. And that created its own, like, what do you do when someone's left holding the emotional bucket and can't resolve issues with someone? What do you do with your own emotions in that case? You can't even process, you can't even understand to begin to process. And that's something now we're working towards, tremoring in other ways to somatically release this energy that's, trapped in our nervous system because it didn't have an outlet. And that's a really powerful one for both of us. Do you want to add anything on that?
Of course. I remember, we're working on my book and I was talking about 2022, 2020, mostly 2022, where I just got bigger and bigger. And bigger. It was like this oompa loompa, like just expanding outward, just rounding out.
Like the .com bubble.
Yeah. And I couldn't say I wasn't eating more. Yes, I was eating the wrong things at the wrong time, both through lack of education about healthy eating, but also when you're sat there and you want a little bit of sweetness in life because everything outside is just ugh, then eventually you do, of course, put on weight, but the emotional weight of just absorbing everything personally within the family unit, and then that also reflected into the professional sphere as well. So I got, by my body height, obese. So when we're looking at emotional, this emotional life, it can't exist. So we'll move on because the patriarchy could be a whole topic. There's
this could be its own topic.
Just give us a day and yeah. But they want to. There's a false sense of unity that patriarchy creates by seeking to unconsciously erase differences and dissent, always under the banner of family loyalty. We gave you everything. I did this for you. Now it's time to repay me. It's that false energy exchange, transactional.
But I'd argue that like a matriarchal family dynamic, for example, would be one where rather than asserting dominance and power and, guilt and shame overtly, a matriarchal dynamic can be just as unhealthy if you were to withhold love, withhold care and support.
Yeah.
If they don't achieve those roles, or they don't do what they're meant to as well.
Now let's talk about soul families. And when we had our regression, the regressionist said that there are, well, like in this realm, we like to be around people who are familiar. And souls do the same. I mean, if we're going into a scary place or a new place, a dense place, a heavy place, you want to be around souls that are familiar to you. So the regressionist said there are souls that travel together, and then there's you two. And that we tend to find each other in every life. And this is speaking to the concept that family isn't always in blood. It's alignment, it's resonance, it's how your nervous system feels around them. So can you speak to the concept of soul family, and also how that they aren't always easy relationships? Because from the soul's perspective, an extremely narcissistic relationship can be what the soul wants as well.
Yeah.
Not that we're validating any bad behavior.
When I think of soul family, I think of the way oceans move. The bodies of water themselves across the ocean actually move in large currents together. Soul families, as I've seen and understand it, sort of do the same thing. And then in Elinor, in my case, we're soul family that it's like, and I'll speak to video games here, but say you play like League of Legends or Mortal Kombat, and you only want to play the one character every single time. And it's like some souls choose that one person over and over and over. And the universe condones it as long as there's no harm being done. And so that's something that we learned, is that more often than not, we're looking to, if possible, always choose to reincarnate together for more shared lives.
Sign me up. So when you're looking to understand yourself, it also goes, there was I'll take it back, a part of my journey where this was unnerving to me. It's like, I chose this. It's like, I chose this. It's like, yes, you chose this, because it is part of the soul's evolution and contracts are made. But the thing is, like every good contract, not everyone keeps up their side of the agreement. And when you have contracts in families, I mean, the mother and child might be playing out the contract exactly as they promised, but the part that was meant to not quote unquote save you or lessen the blow is not doing their part. So this could be the protective father. And then the pattern continues. And this also happens with siblings. There can be siblings that, they just have so much love for each other, and siblings that cannot stand each other. So contracts are also established, quote unquote, on the other side before incarnation. And understanding this is, well, it has been quite important to our journey, because it gives new light. It takes us away from, not takes us away, it broadens the direct human experience, which is so devastating.
And like speaking to that as well, like the soul can know, the soul can choose and all of that. But once it arrives and the ego starts to be born, free will is at play. And so even though these energies are playing out with these contracts, it's like, what will you, the ego attempting to find unity with the soul again and understand these contracts, how will you choose to act? And again, a lot of these dynamics, some of them can be, I mean, we've been told that some relationships that we've had are basically on cursed timelines. There is no way forward with them. There is no happy ending with certain people in your life as well. And that's a rather grim realization to come to, because, and while timelines can change, sometimes the other half might have contracts or vows that keep them so deeply entrenched into what they believe or what they stand for that there is no free will left from their half to actually change it into a functional timeline anymore.
What's come to me is courting. Can you speak to courting?
I mean, it's a pretty simple concept in the shamanic realm of these invisible connections that we have energetically to someone. If you ever had a friend or an ex, or I mean even a family member as well in this case, who even after you maybe stopped talking or anything like that, or maybe even like a manager or a job you left, and then what happens is it continues to play on you. It continues to come up in your memory and you can't let it go. I mean, you've had it recently with one of your old clients message you about a Zoom session in which something insignificant happened, and that just continued to play on their mind years after. So the element of courting there is really playing out how this situation she was attempting to court to yourself.
Yeah. And also in the family unit, that think of it like an open receiving channel that unconsciously or energetically, however you wish to frame it, the invisible thoughts, patterns, behaviors are being fed to you, and sometimes from you to the other family members. So the more complex the experience is on the outset, just think about all the cables that go running and all the cords that are tangled up. It's like looking at the back of your computer and going, what the hell is going on here? I can't even make sense and I don't know what's plugged into what.
And you said that as well, like feeding you. It's like, think of the parents feeding the baby. They're feeding them the belief systems. They're feeding them the dynamics as well as the food at the same time.
It was in one of my shamanic sessions where I had cords to my mother, both in the sacral and the crown. So how in the world could I have existed when
both ends
were plugged? So of course I couldn't move in the world as a sacral authority by human design. And of course I couldn't quote unquote think for myself. And every time that I did try and think for myself, it would always come under the, well, X person is trying to brainwash you, or, you know, you're always following what other people do. It was one of the things that I hated the most, was being told that I'm just following other people, because it was so threatening to the cord unconsciously. And I had a splitting headache after that session. But it was, you know, it made so much sense. Like, why I could never kick in desire. Why? Because it just wasn't, they weren't even my own centers at that point with the cords.
I mean, and from a human design perspective, it's not the crown, it's the head chakra. It's reworked slightly, but this is the chakra of inspiration, ideas, and even core concepts themselves that come to you. And so if you've got that plugged by mother...
Of course, I tried to recreate... I did recreate her reality, her wishes, her perceptions, her movement of how I should be in the world. You also had an interesting experience with courting to all female members of your family. Yeah,
that was to both of my sisters and my mother as well, and knowing how they all played out and how some were easy, some were harder. One of the worst ones, basically, it went deep into the ocean, like right to the bottom. There was just so much depth to it there, and that I've also discovered crosses over into many lifetimes as well, that it's really not just about this life as well. And that goes back to soul family, because if you've incarnated with people in this life, odds are you've done it in a previous life. And although I haven't found out all of the answers, if you've ever found yourself like not being liked for some reason and you can't figure it out, or there's something off about your energy, it might not be you at the ego level. It might be this unconscious resonance that they hold back to the soul that, you know, permitted for acts to be done in previous lives too. And I'm attempting to work through coming into, you know, what I've done to my own family in this life, in previous incarnations as well.
There is so much to say. We have one more point before we look at wrapping up. I'm the Elinor Moshe on Instagram.
And I'm the Daniel Darman.
Do stay tuned. And if you'd like us to create a funeral for any topic, then please message us. and we will be looking at opening up sacred spaces and meetups in Melbourne for this very topic of how in the world do I imagine it's a ball pit. How do I get my energy out of their energy? How do I separate this? How do I untether myself from them? So do connect with us on social media. We'd love to hear from you and maybe meet you as well. The dinner table. What's your experience of life at the dinner table? The family one, not our one, which is romantic and beautiful and melting moments.
I mean, again, it goes back to the divorce. I remember we had this, got it from an op shop, and it was like a tray that you can use in front of the couch. And we used to spend a lot of dinners after the divorce just sitting in front of the TV watching The Simpsons and eating. And I know that's a bad habit that I still am working through even now, but it's one of focusing on something else. It's not reflecting on your day. It's not what were you really up to as well. We're all tired and we all want to eat. That's the thing I tend to eat. Well, I've tended to eat in the past very quickly and just want to get through it. And my sisters can very much vouch for the one time one of them sat there watching me eat, and she's just like, Daniel, you're not in prison. Slow down. You don't have to inhale it. And I had no idea that that's what I was even doing.
Yeah. So,
sometimes it'd even be the case of it was just us kids. We'd have to make dinner and then eat it together as well. My mother was at university at the time, and sometimes she'd stay back. And so we were very self-sufficient, but it was also eating dinner at the dinner table is not really in a very sort of conventional sense, sitting there all together, talking about the day. I don't have a lot of memories of.
Well,
how about yourself?
I'll speak to that, but the reason why I mentioned this is that the family, especially its expression at the dinner table, which is a sacred act, can be a sacred act. This is a microcosm of society. It's reflective of the politics, the hierarchies, the inequities we see in the world come to play at the family table. So when someone is being silenced, if there's silence within, there's silence without. If there is imbalance within, there's an imbalance without. If the mother feels that she's toiled and she's worked and she's unappreciated, and the dad comes home and is tired and the kid doesn't get any attention, so on and so forth. There are many versions of what life is like at the dinner table.
There are no important days in this lifetime.
Well, yeah, it's a life that I had. I'll share in another episode. But what you learn or don't learn about power, about consent. We spoke about food, what you had. You weren't allowed to leave the table when you were done. You weren't allowed to, not eat this, whatnot. We didn't learn boundaries and consent and even respect and how we engage with other people, because that necessarily wasn't shaped in society.
I would say, like, going back to the mother and father, making sure you're fed enough, too much really, and then also not leaving until you've finished everything there. That's actually one that I respected them. I didn't disagree. I didn't fight that contract. I played that role. But what I did in the respecting them was disrespect my own body. And that's the relationship that lasts.
And we all took that personally.
Yeah, very much so.
This has been hopefully dense, hopefully unsettling. It is one of the tougher directions to look. And one thing I want to mention, and this is a practice that came to us through QHHT, but also I had a session, I was doing acupuncture for a while, is to try and create separation between you and mother or father or sister. Call them by their name, not their role, because that loosens so much in your mind that you really start to see them as someone else having their own experience, and it starts to loosen the grip of the role, the perceived role. And that's why we still wanted to do this episode, because they might be playing the character of mother, but are they really mother when you look at it from a soul level? And this was very challenging to our belief systems, and it was very hard to talk about them and not call them mum or dad. But now, when we have to say mum or dad, that feels unnatural.
I'm seeing a crowbar right now. It's forcing separation.
Yeah.
And that's a great way we can use language as well to sort of redefine those, like you mentioned, the patriarchal systems and the power structure.
So we invite you to deeper self-inquiry. Think about the following. How has your construct of family kept you in harmful dynamics? Where has it suppressed your individuality? Where has it erased the need for consent or boundaries?
Oof. That's a powerful one for both of us.
we can tarot and journal on that one for sure.
And then ultimately,
how has it contorted your sense of self? We're acknowledging that families are complex, very complex. We don't come in with a blank slate. With these are very deep and loaded relationships from the outset. They can be beautiful, and we hope that you are one who is experiencing that, but they can also be damaging. And also allow yourself to entertain the notion of what your true family might be, because just that thought alone gives you space to be more of yourself and to identify what is a healthy, conscious expression of family. So family is not necessarily the people that you're told to love. It's the people, blood, chosen, or soul, who choose to see you every day in all of your forms.
Not necessarily every day, but...
Not every day, no. On choice.
but they hold space for you.
They hold
more
space
often than not, at least.
But they also allow space for who you are to become. There is boundaries, there's respect for them, and they definitely are not ones who demand you to shrink into the role they've cast out on you, and who don't mistake proximity to love.
The lie that family is everything. I mean, really, it just collapses when you see that everything includes even the dark elements like control, silence, and then, as I mentioned before, disrespecting myself, and really it was a type of self-betrayal that I'm still trying to unwind even today. But what matters is not who you share a name with or DNA, but who you can share your full self with.
You. I choose you.
I choose you.
So if this episode has resonated with you, do share it with someone who is also redefining what family means for them. And whether on Instagram or if you're listening to this on YouTube, tell us in the comments, who is your family now and how did you choose them? So until the next episode, keep discovering the truth of you.
Because you're too big to be this small.